Okay, it is May 9th, 2017, and Mahoney and I just got home from a public lecture by Edward Snowden. He was lecturing via the internet from Russia to the University of Lethbridge, University of Winnipeg, and was it Brandeis?
No,
Uh,
Bradford, maybe.
Bradford? I don't know. Some other
think
university.
Start with a B.
An important one, no doubt. A liberal arts university,
I.
no doubt.
If it's not U of L, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so we thought we'd record a few reflections right away before we forget all our thoughts about it. We talked about some things in the car on the way back over here, but I guess, I don't know where to start. General impressions?
Well, when they were introducing him and talking about how he went from being a security guard and moving his way up in the, what is it, NSA, all the way to being like their main computer tech guy, I was actually kind of quite surprised by that. And I guess in a way I was surprised by it because he had, I guess in a lot of ways, kind of a similar story to what I had, because like he didn't finish high school, I didn't finish high school, and then he got an important government job, but then I ended up getting an important university job, which I thought was really interesting. It's just funny how, things can go that way, because I mean I went from being a teenager that had no prospects other than maybe working at a 7-Eleven, to holding this kind of major position in a university, a world-renowned university, without a high school diploma. And then he went, from basically being in the same boat to, being in this huge important position in the NSA, which I thought was really, I think it's an inspiring thing, in terms of like what you can do with yourself if you just, put your thoughts towards that, like you work hard at it, because you never know what you're gonna achieve in life. I thought when I was in high school, one of my high school teachers told me that my best prospects in life were to find myself a sugar daddy and hope that he kept me long enough, that I could make something off of him, that he was going to set me up for life, kind of thing.
See, now she reveals the plan.
Yeah, and that's why I chose a man that was in serious school loan debt and and basically homeless at the time that I met you.
You didn't know that.
Yes, I did. You were living in my basement, basically. I knew you were homeless. My parents were like, taking care of you. So my dad had to even provide you with a vehicle.
Yeah.
And they gave you spending money. So I knew you were not well off when I met you.
Yeah, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah, I knew you were a poor man when I met you.
Anyway, you can continue with the story now.
Okay, so anyway, now he doesn't say it himself. He doesn't say it himself. He says he's not a hero. He says he's just a citizen. But to many people, all over the world, I'm guessing. He is a hero because he chose to speak out against what he felt was an injustice to the constitution of his country, which he felt was an injustice to his other people within his country. So in that way, to a lot of people, he became a hero, and they see him as I guess in a way he's kind of gotten this like guru status kind of thing. But at the same time, just listening to him talk, he said, "No, I'm not that. I'm just a citizen, and I'm doing what every citizen should feel is their right, and they need to do it when they see injustices happening." So, to see that, it was an inspiring thing, and I think a lot of people can take that inspiration and do with it, what they will with their lives, and make something with their lives, make something that means something with their lives. Which also brings me to another thing. I was reading an article the other day about, how the millennials, are so bad and whatever, and that they have to have jobs that mean something to them, and how this is a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just miss the millennial generation. I'm part of Generation X, and when I was growing up, the things I heard about Generation X were the same things. We were too entitled, we're lazy, we're bad, we're this, we're that. But really, it was that we're not all built to learn in that European format that's set up for us in our school systems. Why didn't I graduate high school? I mean, I'm obviously not stupid, but why didn't I graduate? It was because I couldn't function in that oppressive system of the way that things were taught. I couldn't learn that way, and I had to learn a completely different way. And obviously I'm not stupid, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten to the point that I am in my life. If I was stupid, I would be like scrubbing toilets or something, I'm not saying that people that do that are stupid. A lot of people.
I've scrubbed toilets before.
Yeah, exactly. But that would have been like my entire life's vocation. I would have never done anything else with my life. And so, I mean, I've had those shitty jobs where I've had to deliver newspapers. I had to be on my hands and knees pulling other people's weeds and stuff, but it didn't mean that I gave up on my life. I kept going, and I got myself to where I'm at now, and I use those experiences as building blocks to get here, as part of my motivation to get here. And and I think it really shows that if you really want it, if you're really passionate about something, you can get there, and it doesn't have to take you, like 30 years of schooling to get there. If you want to become like a doctor, yeah, you take 30 years of schooling to become a doctor, but if it's something else that you're really passionate about, you don't have to take that same route. So in that way, I think his story is inspiring to people, and an important story to hear of how he got from being, a high school dropout to being in this super important position in the NSA.
Yeah. Just gotta tell Fizzle, don't breathe in the microphone.
Yeah, but so those were some, just going back to like the beginning of the talk. Those were things that I got out of it, and then there's like a lot more.
Yeah, to me there was a couple of main things um, the big ideas that he was pushing. One of them was, of course, a justification for what he did. So, well, they both have to do with the justification for what he did, but one of them was this idea that there's a law and then there's the human conscience, and that laws are limited, and sometimes you'll come into a situation where the law and your conscience are in conflict, right? So there's so many cases of that all the time, and he was advocating to go with your conscience rather than the law in those kind of cases. And for the most part, I would agree with that. And it reminds me, of the recent thing with my brother and the black bear, for instance. The black bear cub, it was illegal for. My brother found a black bear cub dying on the trail in Western Oregon about a month ago, and it was in a rainstorm. The thing was dying on its back, hardly breathing. And he made the decision. He didn't even know it was illegal at the time. He made the decision to pick up the bear and run with it. Take it to he ended up taking it to a wildlife rehabilitation place. But he also made it very public on Facebook. In fact, it was through Facebook that he found the rehabilitation center to go to. And then, of course, because it was on Facebook, it went viral. And next thing you know, he was facing potential legal problems for doing something to save a bear. And it was a really, it's a weird situation where the law doesn't match human consciousness because, or human conscious, because, you can buy a bear tag in Western Oregon to go and kill a black bear for $15. But if you save a black bear,
you can get like a
you can get like a $6,000 fine and 2 years in jail. It's ridiculous. So there are a lot of situations out there where the laws just haven't taken into account really what's the right thing to do in a certain situation. Some of those laws have other things behind them, other motivations and stuff behind them. So Edward Snowden, of course, was sworn to secrecy. I mean, he had to sign the secrecy.
Well, that was conflicting to. It's a non-disclosure agreement. He was told to sign, but he also took an oath to serve.
Yeah, that's the second point I'm coming to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he signed this. He signed the thing that, where he had the non-disclosure agreement. It's probably the same thing that I signed when I was working, when I got into military intelligence. I was working signals intelligence, and it basically says that if you, like he was saying, if you get caught divulging secrets, then you really have no legal rights after that. They can go after you, and you're not going to get a trial among your peers. You're not going to get that. You might get executed. In fact, when I signed mine, there was a death clause on it. You had to acknowledge that in certain situations where the disclosure of secrets and confidential information and such is treasonous, you could be executed for it. So that you sign that, but like he said also. You were talking about when he came in, he took an oath. And that oath was an oath to really more to the people, and it's to protect the Constitution of the United States.
And he specifically said to be a good citizen of the United States.
Yeah. But it was to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Which could include the government, and that's why that oath is there. And he felt like that oath trumped his disclosure agreement. And like the oath was the broader agreement that he had as a citizen with among toward the other citizens, basically. But the disclosure agreement was the more localized agreement that he had just with the organization and the government and such. And I kind of agree to that too. I mean, at least when the two came into conflict with him, he had to make a decision and about what to whether to go with the oath and his conscience again, or whether to go with the rule of law that goes along with the disclosure agreement. And he chose to go with his conscience, and he's paying for it, you know.
But he'll probably in his lifetime never ever go back home.
Yeah.
It'll probably be something like where after he's dead he'll get pardoned or something like that.
Right.
So he'll probably never ever set foot in North America ever again, because I mean, if he came to Canada, we know that, the Canadian government would just turn him right over. He said he did apply for asylum in Canada and he was turned down.
Yeah. He took a couple of good jabs at us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't blame him for that. I mean,
no, it's ironic. We're asking him to do public talks for, we're asking him to do talks for Canadian universities to teach Canadian students, but we won't give him asylum.
Yeah, well, not only that, but I mean, we gave asylum to 25,000 Syrian refugees that are in a war-torn country, and they are, they are in a desperate situation. They are facing, probable death by their own government. He is in a situation where he is facing probable death by his government as well, and we denied him.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of situation because our neighbor is the United States, is the government that's after him.
Yeah.
And that's a big neighbor. That's like it's like we're living next to like the bully on the block.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
Next door to him. And so are we going to harbor the guy that he wants to beat up and try to keep him safe?
Well, that's the thing though, is I don't, for someone in his position, being that he's a whistleblower, I don't think there's anywhere in the world that he could possibly be safe. I think he'd have to leave the planet and go to another planet in order to be safe, because I think doing what he did, no matter what, he's probably always got to be looking over his shoulder and thinking, any moment some secret, spy agent, whatever, could come and kill me.
Yeah, but he's in probably the best place to be for his particular situation. He's in Russia,
which
he's in the home of the U.S.'s most powerful enemy, really.
not entirely, because I mean, when you look at it with who the president of the United States is right now and his attachment to the Russian government,
I don't know that he has an attachment.
If that attachment exists, whatever, then, the Russian government might decide, oh, well, we'll kill him for you, if you guys give us this. And who knows, that, crazy guy in the White House might be like, yeah, okay, I'll give you this if you kill him, And so I think no matter where he goes, I think he's in danger.
Where he goes, he's in danger. But of all the places to be in danger, like, you'd rather be there than Bangladesh or something,
Yeah, because they are a rather modern country with lots of modern conveniences.
And they have, they're gonna be a little bit more protected against any agents of the U.S. coming in to do an assassination, something like that. That's all besides the point, though.
Yeah.
The big question that he raises in why he leaked what he leaked is, well, there are two big questions. One of them is not really, I don't find it very interesting, and that's the question of whether or not these organizations, spy organizations, intelligence organizations, whether or not they should be able to do things that the public doesn't know about.
Well, see, there is a huge conflict of interest all the way around that, because he was talking about the Boston bombers. Okay, and so yeah, these spy agencies are collecting all of this data about every single citizen that is connected to their networks, right? So like AT&T, Google, Facebook, all that. So they have like everything that's ever happened on their servers or their service, right? As well as, they're also like collecting as much as they can from, anywhere really. And so, then he's saying, the Boston bombers happened. Well, if those companies were not collecting that information and giving it to the government, then it probably would have taken a lot longer to identify who the Boston bombers were, and taken a lot longer to catch them. They could still be on the run if they hadn't gotten that information, right? And then, the U.S. applauded them for saying, oh, well, now you guys caught them because you were able to look at all this stuff. But at the same time, then they're also saying, oh, but you shouldn't be collecting that information. Well, it's like you got to make up your fucking mind, because, do you want them collecting that information so that they can catch, potential murderers, child porn, traffickers, human traffic people, all that? Do you want them to be able to get that information when they, know that this particular person has committed a crime, and be able to say, yeah, now we know all this stuff about that person? Or do you want them to not collect any of that information, and then you have a situation with like the Boston bombers? If they didn't have that information, those guys could, possibly still be on the run. By now they could be in like Yemen or something, right? And
I know somebody's probably going to comment on this and say that they didn't use that mass collection technique with the Boston bombers. That they, once the bomb thing had happened, then they went and collected the camera stuff.
But they did, because I remember seeing stuff saying that they found their Facebook pages and stuff. They've got information off of their Facebook pages.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
And so they did use the mass collection techniques to get those guys. Yeah, they relied heavily on that data.
Yeah. So yeah, and he made this point that the mass collection of intelligence, like they're doing, where they're collecting all of our data, all of our phone stuff, everything that we email and text, and
anything that you
social network, anything we put online
onto any electronic device, basically they're collecting.
Right, and they're storing all this stuff, and it goes back decades now. The storage that they have. So he did make this case that that material is really only useful after the fact. It can never be used. It's never been used, to date at least, to thwart any threat, any coming threat. What it has been used to do is, after something has gone down, then you can go back to that data and you can know a lot about the individuals that were involved in that event. But it's not being used to prevent anything. So he had this case in point, and his argument is basically they shouldn't be doing that collecting, because it's a breach
violation
of our personal property,
yeah,
our private privacy. What got me in when he was doing his talk, when he brought up private property as an example, of something good, that's when my hairs kind of raised. I'm like, I don't really think private property is very good. I don't know if I agree with hard-line private property ideas, as a guy who has often had to trespass to get to places where I should just be able to go, because I'm a human being on this planet. You know, we have this weird private property thing. We're the only animals in the world that have that. Right? I mean, there's animals that are territorial. Territorial is one thing, but saying this is mine and it's private, and you can't come here, I don't think that's cool. And furthermore, like when I start thinking about it, and I should concede that this is not a brand new thought, because I've heard this thought raised before by Joe Rogan, not in relation necessarily to Edward Snowden, but just in general, the thing with our technologies and the way that it's going, and the way that our lives are becoming so much more visible and we're having less privacy, might not be a bad thing in the long run. But what if it makes us all more honest? You know?
Yeah. Well, that's one way of looking at it, but another way of looking at it is kind of like a Mormon recruiter or a Jehovah's Witness recruiter. Or some kind of religious zealot. They come along and they say, okay, well, you have to believe in this because I said so, or my priest or my rabbi or whatever, whatever those guys are called. Let's throw the dogs inside.
Dogs, Cleo, Fizzo, come on, you guys, time to go inside. You guys are just gonna be barking. Let's go. Come on, Fizzo, inside. Wendy's good.
Yeah. So anyway.
All right, Wendy, scooch over. You can't have the middle of the seat.
So making me think about that was, these people, they try to push on you what their values are, their morals are, right? And that doesn't go along with everybody else's morals. So you take, for instance, Anonymous. Okay, so the group Anonymous has leaked government documents from the U.S. government, and I believe other governments. I'm not completely sure because I'm not really up on their stuff. But, okay, they leaked government documents onto the internet and said, you guys shouldn't be doing this. What you're doing is bad. The mass collection of data is bad, whatever, and you guys need to stop. And so we're going to keep releasing these documents. At the same time, they turned around and said, okay, Ashley Madison, you guys are there to facilitate people that either have open marriages or open relationships or, are dissatisfied with their current situation and they're looking for an out, whatever. And we think it's wrong. So if you guys don't shut down, we're going to release your subscriber list. And everybody on that list, all their spouses are going to get an email saying that they were on the list, right? So then they release that data. So in a way, that's kind of doing the exact same thing as saying, you have to believe what I believe because I said it's right, not because that's what you believe, which to me is very, very wrong. And a lot of that goes back, for me personally, to things that happened to people that I personally know when they were in residential school, to relatives of mine, people being told, oh, well, you're speaking Blackfoot, so I'm going to beat the shit out of you because that's wrong. You're supposed to speak French or English because I believe that's what's right. You don't get to speak your language because your language is evil. That's what they were told. And then they were told, you can't practice your culture because your culture is evil because you don't follow that guy, Jesus. who's stupid. Anyway, so they're telling them that they're telling my people that have lived here for thousands of years that our way of life is wrong and evil and bad, and we're going to go to this imaginary place called hell, unless we follow them. Well, that's the exact same thing that Anonymous has done to the people of the world by exposing Ashley Madison, is saying that, my way is right and your way is wrong. And so there's just this like conflict on both sides of that, of the privacy issue.
I don't see how that's a different side of the privacy issue, though, because the fact is, because they had private things, because they had secrets, they were easily manipulated, or they were made to, they could be punished because they had secrets. But what if the fact
well,
that
no,
this is
what I'm
happening,
saying is that they are trying to shove their personal beliefs on another person that maybe doesn't believe that same thing.
yeah,
That is my point.
and the way that they're doing it though is by exposing their secrets.
Yeah, and so, I think people are entitled to keep their secrets, to have secrets if they have them. It's part of the human experience. It's part of being human to have secrets. It's part of, how many things do you think every single day that you don't actually say, but you think them to yourselves? That's a secret.
Yeah, of course. I got there's secrets that going on all the time in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Even just little things where you can just like tell somebody one thing, or tell somebody something that's not exactly the truth, but
Yeah,
you didn't intend it as a big lie or anything. But then after that, it's it's looming. It's like, I hope they don't find out that I was bullshit at that,
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
Yeah. So that's, I think as a human being, I'm entitled to those things. I'm entitled to have my private thoughts. I'm entitled to have my private space, my private bubble around me. Okay? Just as much as I think you're entitled to have that private bubble around you. So, like,
Yes.
I don't want somebody, because, I may think something and it may be in there, but, I don't think that if I were to write it down in a book, let's say I had a diary,
Right.
if I wrote it down in a diary, would you feel that it is your right to read my diary, to read my private thoughts that I'm writing down for myself, to read to myself?
But I'm not kind of a guy who really thinks much about rights, because I think rights are fictive things that we make up anyway.
Well, yeah, in a way, yeah, but these are also part of the human experience, because everybody has that kind of feeling where they have that personal outlet of something.
Yeah.
Whatever that personal outlet is, whether it's writing, painting, whatever, the personal outfit. Okay, like, take for instance, your Meatloaf story. So Meatloaf had that song where he said, I'll do anything but that, or whatever the line was.
I won't do that.
Yeah. So he, and he didn't want to disclose what that was.
Strap on.
He so for years he wouldn't disclose that because he didn't want to, and that's his right as a human being to not say that. He doesn't have to come out and say it if he doesn't want to say it.
Yeah.
Right. And he got to a point in his life where he's like, well, I don't care anymore, I'm just gonna say it. But if you think about the time that song came out, if he had disclosed that at that time, he would have been a pariah.
Yeah.
At the time that song came out.
Yeah.
But the time that we're living in now, people will laugh it off because we live in a different era now.
Right. But yeah, all the same, like, it has been the human experience to have secrets and such, but the human experience is also changing with this technology. I mean, really, like, the idea that you're going to be able to use these platforms like Facebook or Google or whatever, Twitter, what have you, the idea that you can use those platforms and that you're going to be able to keep your secrets is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to be able to keep them from the corporations that are running those platforms, and you're not going to be able to keep them from the government, I don't think, or the governments. You can keep your secrets from each other a little bit better, but the walls might be breaking down when you have groups that are like threatening, okay, if you don't do this, I'm going to expose you for your secret because we've hacked into your stuff and we see what you're doing, right? Or because we have this. So I think either this technology is going to either potentially make us more honest because we'll think twice about keeping a lot of our secrets, or being secretive in general. Well, I think like already we are far much more liberal in allowing people to see our lives than like my parents or your parents are, right? Me and you,
Or even like our,
and,
maybe, older siblings even.
Yeah, so we're already being more honest. We're already being more open with ourselves to the public, and
Well,
but at the same time though, it could go the other way. It could make us better liars.
yeah, that's a huge issue too. But going back to your other point there of being more honest, having this social media outlet in my life has actually helped me change myself in a lot of ways, because I used to be extremely shy where I wouldn't speak to people. I mean, when 20 years ago when we first got married, I mean, I didn't speak to people. Ryan would introduce me to people and be like, no, just like go and stand behind him and be weird,
Just peek around from behind my back.
Yeah, basically, and it was funny though too, because I know I taught that to my daughter unknowingly. I did.
Hugely shy.
Yeah, she would stand behind us and she would not speak to people until she had known them for at least 6 or 7 months. And she had to have like daily contact with those people for her to speak with them and even to laugh in their presence. And that, was because of me, because of how shy I was. And having this social outlet has actually helped me in a lot of ways, because I used to be really afraid of even having my picture taken. I think maybe through almost my entire teenage life, there's maybe like 2 or 3 pictures where you can actually see my face. The rest of them is like the back of my head, because I refused to have my picture taken, just because of my own shyness. But now I can stand up in front of an auditorium full of people. I still get stage fright, I still get nervous, but I can stand up there and speak. Now, I don't, whereas, even 15 years ago, I never would have been able to do that. I would have been like, there's no way I'm going up there. I can't do it. Yeah. And to be on camera like this, I would have been like, no, I can't. Because I wouldn't want anybody to see me. I was just so shy. But now I'm at a point in my life, and I think it's largely because of social media, where I don't care about that. I'm a more open person. I talk more to people. I try to be more friendly, because like the biggest criticism I got throughout my childhood and teenage years was that I was too unfriendly. People thought that I was mean and that I was unfriendly just because I was afraid to speak. I was afraid that, if I talked to someone, they wouldn't like my voice. If I looked at them, they wouldn't like the way that I looked. If I, did anything to draw attention to myself, someone would criticize me and tell me that they didn't like it. And I was really worried about that. But I think largely because of social media, it's forced me to be a more open person.
Yeah, I enjoy social media. I mean, it gets people into trouble too, but it also, like, there's a whole big bunch of my family that I was never so communicative with, my wider extensive family, that I never had regular communications with them at all. I might talk to them
like once every
year,
5
maybe.
years,
Yeah,
or maybe
some of them, years.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have some interaction with those people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I got no problems with the social media, and I understand that by participating in that, I am revealing a lot about myself, and I assume that the data is being collected. I assume that because I would hate for it not to be being collected in a way, especially by like Facebook themselves, because when I want to go back and look at my journal of my life that is pretty much Facebook from the last decade plus, I hope they retain that so I can go back and cull it, and look at it, and I hope they find ways to make that history of those communications more accessible, even where you can just like type in a date or a date range or something like that, and then you can look at the stuff that you did during that time. There's a lot of ways that they can make that data very useful for us to be helpful. And I got to assume that there's a trade-off for that. There's a trade-off for that. They're going to be using what we put out there for to inform their marketing campaigns. All the different companies that want to advertise through Facebook, they got to be able to target the people that are most likely to be interested in their ads. They got to be able to target the people that are most interested in whatever kind of different products, including journalism, which Snowden talked a lot about. Different people are interested in different kinds of articles and different kinds of journalism and such. We only get exposure to all the good stuff now because we have social networks like Facebook that are collecting our data, collecting our information, and putting it through different processes to figure out who likes what and what they should send our way. I don't think that's a bad thing. For me personally, I accept that it's a trade-off that that I'm going to be used for other people to make money. I accept that, but I'm also getting use of a platform that I don't have to pay for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people used to be, I remember, watching movies in the 80s and whatever, and people would be scared of, the satellites were spying on us and whatever. Really, in a lot of ways, with the things that we're doing online, we're spying on ourselves in a lot of ways. So anything that you put on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, anything at all, you have to assume that once it's been connected to a network, all that information is already out there. No matter what that information is, it's already been collected by somebody. So the instant that your computer is connected to a network, you have to assume that that information has been collected. In some ways, it's not a bad thing, because you do have things like the Facebook memories, where you can look back and say, oh, well, I was doing this 10 years ago and, whatever. But, and then when it comes to prosecuting criminals, what we perceive as criminals, and I say that lightly because, 100 years ago, if somebody murdered somebody else, it wouldn't have been perceived that much of a crime in this area. Actually, it wouldn't have been perceived as a crime in this area. According to Canadian law, at this point, I could go out on the reserve and scalp somebody if I wanted to, because that's my place to be native, to be Blackfoot. And I appreciate that. But when it comes to something like, let's say, an ex-boyfriend showed up here and decided that his life sucked, and it was my fault, so he came over and gunned me down. Then whatever data the government has collected on him, they can later go back and take that data, because undoubtedly if he had gotten to that point, he would have posted stuff online saying, oh, I, hate her because she did, she broke up with me and this and that. They could use that as evidence against him to prosecute my murder, right? And, a whole host of other things. So, I don't mind personally that data is being collected if it's going to prosecute someone later for doing something like that.
It can later be called for all kinds of good purposes.
Yeah, but at the same time too, when it comes to, well, if I wanted to be a private person, well, then I need to shut down every single social media account I have. I need to get rid of my phone. I need to get rid of computer. I need to get rid of my tablet. I need to get rid of anything that connects me with the outside world. I need to get rid of credit cards, bank accounts, all of that. Basically, you would have to become like the mythical Herman Mountain Man that has no connection to the outside world in order to stop any data collection from happening. Because if you have a bank account, you can bet they're collecting your data. If you have, anything.
Everything electronic.
Yeah, and everything is electronic now. Yeah. You own a house, you can bet they're collecting your data.
Yeah.
You rent a house, you can bet they're collecting your data. You file your taxes, they're collecting your data. So.
But just because they're collecting your data does not mean anybody's looking at your data.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Most of the data that's being collected, you think about it, it's like, I went to 7-Eleven to get a soda, or damn, these chicken wings are awesome. That's like 99.999% of the data that they're collecting in most cases.
It's just being stored.
Most of it is noise.
Yeah. It's just being stored.
And it only comes down, the only time that it gets used is, somebody goes and they do something like the Boston Bombers did. If that data was not being collected on those two guys, then they might not know who those guys were that did it. And then, the intelligence community would be like, all right, how come we don't know anything about these guys? How come we don't know who they are? How come we don't know, know anything, right? Yeah. They would have been mad about that.
Well, the public would have been mad at the intelligence community. They would have been saying, well, with all of this stuff, all of this technology and stuff, how come you don't know who these guys are? Right?
Yeah.
How come you don't know anything about them? They're gonna. And the other thing is, like, the intelligence community. Talk about human beings having an inherent thing about keeping secrets, right?
Yeah,
the intelligence community is all about
secrets.
Keeping secrets.
That's the whole point.
So, how do you expect the intelligence community to let the public or even Congress know everything that they're doing? They got to be spying on Congress too.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. They're spying on not just their enemies, but they're spying on people at home too. And it's because they have to. Like, really.
That's their job.
Yeah, it's their job. They say publicly, yeah, we don't spy against Americans, or, CSIS says we don't spy against Canadians. But we know that's not true because if there is, let's say, an infiltrator of some kind in the United States or in Canada, and they infiltrate the government in some way, how would they ever find that person if they were not spying on Americans or Canadians?
Yeah.
They couldn't find that
They
person.
better be. They better be spying on us.
Yeah.
That's
That's kind of the
that's the whole, you know.
yeah, that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not just the crazy foreigner that's going to get us.
Yeah.
You know? It's probably from the inside, an inside job, just like most rapes, just like most murders, just like most violent crimes, they happen from the inside.
Yeah, and
people
it's
that know you.
Yeah, people that know you are the ones that are going to kill you. People that know you are the ones that are going to rape you.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to being spied on, then it's your government is going to be spying on you. You better count on that, because even without social media and the technology that we have now, the government was still spying on you before. They have divisions set up to say, okay, now you guys will spy on this state, and you guys will spy on that state, and you guys will spy on this state.
I don't know if they got
And
that.
well,
they don't even need that. They just have a mass collection.
well, no, I'm saying like without the technology that we have today.
Oh yeah.
In like, let's say this was like back in the 80s, then they would have people. They would assign people to spy on.
Every state had an FBI agency.
Exactly.
In the state.
And
why do you think they're in every state?
Yeah, exactly. They're there to watch the public. Every single town in Canada has an RCMP detachment. They're there to watch the Canadian public.
Yeah, among other things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's the RCMP and then it's CSIS.
Yeah.
So, the RCMP, they're like the FBI of Canada. Right. So, they're not just like local police officers. They're also the spy agency. They're also the infiltrators, and that to make sure that, things are going the Canadian way.
Right. Right.
What Canadians perceive to be right. And so, and that's what the FBI is for. They're there to make sure things are going the American way, what the Americans perceive to be right. That's a huge part of their function.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think that the NSA is wrong in what they're doing, and I don't think Edward Snowden was wrong in what he did.
No.
I think there's justification for both, from both sides, and I think this is a good example of how like our use of technologies and our attempt to keep secrets with these technologies is not working. It's not going to work. We're going to be made.
Well, it also
exposed.
really exposes, how there's those conflicts in the law as compared to what you expect the everyday citizen to do.
Yeah.
So you expect the everyday citizen to hold up these things, and then the law says, but if you hold up those things, in some cases we're going to come after you anyway, and you're going to die because of it. So
yeah. It's an interesting case study, that's for sure. And we only got about 10 minutes left before I gotta go get Babe, but the only other impression that I had from the event that was that Snowden is really well crafted in his oration and his ability to speak, and I got a kind of a kick out of the way that with each question that we asked him, he would speak, and address that question at length, but he'd always end his parts on some kind of almost guru-ish, wise statement. He always led, and I don't know if he led to those on purpose or if he just waited until, in the context of his talking, he felt himself, oh, I'm going to say this, and that's going to be pretty good, so I better just leave it at that and stop right there. But he always ended his responses to the questions, with these really cool.
Yeah, he's very good at like, I don't know if he took speaking classes or what, but
I'm sure that they've coached him on how.
Oh yeah. And it taught him to speak in such a way that he wins, skeptics over to his side and that kind of thing. I'm sure, but I really noticed that as well with his speaking.
He just he knows what his main messages are.
Yeah, he knows what his main messages are, and he really gets those across. But he really he speaks in a way that really it makes you want to stand behind him and believe in what he believes in. But taking it further, thinking about it afterwards, it's like right away I say, yeah, it's good, but you kind of got to think about it a little bit, and then
it's more complicated.
Yeah, and then you start realizing, well, it's a lot more complicated than what was just said. I absorbed what was said, but do I sincerely agree, hard on this side or hard on that side, or is it more fluid than that?
Right.
I know a few people, they went in there already 100%, like we heard them talking, I'm behind Snowden all the way kind of thing, whatever he has to say, I know it's going to be awesome and amazing and blah, 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 right? I'm going to support him 100%. You could hear that in people's conversation. They didn't come out and say it directly, but you could hear it in the kinds of things that they were saying. And then, there was a couple of people that were like, I don't know this guy, maybe he did do a bad thing and whatever. I don't know if, whatever. And then it was funny because he said he was talking about how our phones are all, all this data, because we all have GPS chips in our phones now, all this data is going out all the time. And so the government knows, if they want to, exactly where you are and that you're attending that talk. They know, where you are. And there was an audible gasp in the auditorium that we were in, and I kind of wanted to laugh at that point, because I was like, well, that is like, if you read anything about technology, that's basically common knowledge.
Not new information.
Yeah, it's not new information. So when I heard that audible gasp, I kind of wanted to laugh.
Or there was some people leaving the theater, and there was wine and cheese and such outside the theater, and a little bit of milling around, and we got asked, so are you gonna do anything to protect your privacy more? Are you going to encrypt your messaging and stuff? No.
I don't see the point in that, because the more that we try to encrypt things, the more the government will try to decrypt it.
Yeah, well, plus Snowden tried to convince us that if we weren't on the side of privacy, then it's almost like we're doing a disservice to our fellow citizens, because maybe we're not affected personally right now, but it's the people who are the disempowered and the oppressed and stuff like that. Those are the people who need to worry about having privacy. We're not worried about it because we're in power or whatever right now. But when push comes to shove, you don't need the privacy until you need it, was his message. And he's like, if you're not supporting it now, then you're doing a disservice to the people who are potential victims of governments and this kind of thing. I don't know, to me that was kind of like
to me that sounded really propagandish.
Yeah, it's propagandish, and not only propagandish, but I just don't like the tone of somebody saying, if you don't do this, then you're this.
Well, it makes me think about the oath that the special forces of the United States guys take, what is it in the Latin oath?
Oh, their motto
Yeah,
to free
they're
the oppressed, de oppresso liber.
yeah. So to free the oppressed, when really that's not really what they're doing. Um, they're planning future wars for the government to make money off of later, or they have some kind of resource that the government wants from them. And really, I mean, when it comes down to it, if the government wants something in that area, then they'll send their special forces there, and they tell these guys, you're going there to free the oppressed. Well, maybe those people aren't oppressed.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the same rhetoric that was fed to Europeans in order to get them to come to North America, was to free us natives because we were being oppressed by our backwards culture, is what they were saying, and then now it's 2018 or 2017, and we have
Save the child.
yeah, kill the Indian, save the child, and now it's 2017, and we have all these little white girls at Coachella running around with their turkey feather neon pink headdresses, and there's this big conversation about cultural appropriation, and that it's very similar. It's a very similar thing. And now, people were, back then, were all, kill the Indian, whatever, assimilate. And now, if you're non-native, then it's really cool for you to steal that native identity and wear it as if it's your own and whatever, to make yourself look cool. But if you're native yourself, you're not allowed to, in a lot of ways, participate in that, in being native. I mean, take a look at what's happening at Standing Rock.
We need a whole nother recording to talk about cultural appropriation, because
but that kind of goes side and side, hand in hand with this too. So, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing, and I think we need to stop because we need to go get our kid from work.
Gotta go run and get our kid.
Yeah.